Stop scrolling. Stop everything. Because what I'm about to tell you will shatter the comfortable lie you've been living. Right now, as you listen to these words, you're drowning. Drowning in a sea of fake smiles, forced conversations, and hollow connections. You think you're socializing, but you're suffocating. You think you're building relationships, but you're burying yourself. And the worst part? You don't even know it's happening. Every "how are you?" you answer with "fine." Every laugh you force at jokes that aren't funny. Every time you bite your tongue to avoid conflict, you're trading pieces of your soul for fool's gold. You're becoming a stranger to yourself, one polite interaction at a time. Niccolò Machiavelli saw this 5 centuries ago. He watched powerful men crumble not from external enemies, but from their desperate need to be loved by everyone. He witnessed brilliant minds turn to mush because they couldn't bear the thought of disappointing others. And he left us a warning that most people are too weak to hear. The more you crave acceptance, the more you surrender your power. The more you chase being liked, the further you drift from who you truly are. But here's what terrifies me, and should terrify you too. You've been conditioned to ignore this warning. Society has programmed you to believe that being social, being liked, being accepted is the highest achievement. It's all a lie. A beautiful, seductive, soul-crushing lie. You want proof? Look at your last week. How many times did you say what you really thought? How many times did you act from your core beliefs rather than social expectations? How many conversations left you feeling energized rather than drained? If you're honest, and I mean brutally honest, the answer will make you sick. The invisible prison you've built around yourself. You think you're free, but you're living in a prison of politeness. Every social interaction has become a performance, and you've forgotten who you are when the curtain falls. Let me paint you a picture of your daily reality. You wake up, and before your feet hit the floor, you're already rehearsing. Rehearsing what you'll say to your colleagues. Rehearsing how you'll react to conflict. Rehearsing which version of yourself you'll present to which group of people. You've become a chameleon, constantly shifting colors to match your environment. But here's the tragedy Machiavelli understood. When you become everything to everyone, you become nothing to yourself. Your mind, that brilliant, unique, irreplaceable consciousness, has been dulled by the constant need to please. You've trained yourself to think in safe, acceptable patterns. You've learned to speak in approved phrases. You've mastered the art of being forgettable, and the world celebrates your disappearance. Why? Because a mind that doesn't think independently is a mind that can be controlled. A person who needs approval is a person who can be manipulated. You've become exactly what the system wants: compliant, predictable, harmless. But something inside you is screaming. That's why you're still watching. That's why these words are hitting you like a sledgehammer to the chest. Because somewhere, buried beneath layers of social conditioning, your real self is suffocating, and it's fighting for air. The moment your intelligence started dying. There was a moment, do you remember it, when you first chose acceptance over authenticity? Maybe you were in school, afraid to answer a question because you might be wrong. Maybe you were at a party, laughing at something that disgusted you. Maybe you were in a meeting, nodding along with ideas that made no sense. That moment was the beginning of your intellectual death. Because here's what Machiavelli knew that modern society has forgotten. Intelligence isn't just about having smart thoughts. It's about having the courage to think them, speak them, and stand by them, even when everyone else disagrees. But you've been trained to value harmony over honesty. You've been taught that keeping the peace is more important than speaking the truth. You've learned to edit your thoughts before they reach your tongue, filtering out anything that might make others uncomfortable. The result? Your mind has become a museum of unused ideas, unexpressed insights, and unspoken truths. You're intellectually wealthy but emotionally bankrupt because you've hoarded your real thoughts like a miser hoards gold, too afraid to spend them in the marketplace of ideas. And now when you try to think deeply, your mind feels rusty. When you try to speak authentically, the words stick in your throat. When you try to be yourself, you realize you've forgotten who that person is. This isn't depression. This isn't anxiety. This is the natural consequence of trading your mind for social acceptance. This is what happens when you prioritize being liked over being real. The validation addiction that's destroying your life. Machiavelli wrote about love and fear as the two great motivators of human behavior, but he never anticipated the third force that would dominate the modern world, the desperate, all-consuming need for validation. You check your phone constantly, not for information, but for affirmation. Every notification is a hit of digital approval. Every like, every comment, every emoji reaction feeds the monster you've created inside yourself. The monster that needs constant external validation to feel worthy. You've become a validation junkie, and like all addicts, you need bigger and bigger hits to feel the same high. Yesterday's compliment doesn't satisfy today's insecurity. Last week's praise has already faded, leaving you hungry for more. And here's the sick twist. The more validation you get, the less validated you feel. Because deep down, you know it's not real. You know you're performing. You know the applause is for the mask, not the person wearing it. So you try harder. You become more agreeable, more entertaining, more available. You say yes when you want to say no. You smile when you want to scream. You agree when you want to argue. Each time you betray yourself for approval, you drive another nail into the coffin of your authentic self. And the people around you, your friends, your family, your colleagues, they love it. They love having someone who always agrees, someone who never rocks the boat, someone who makes them feel comfortable and unchallenged. But they don't love you. They love the service you provide. They love the emotional labor you perform. They love the fact that you make their lives easier by never making them question their own choices. You've become a supporting character in other people's stories, and you've forgotten that you were meant to be the hero of your own, the terrifying moment of self-recognition. But what happens when you finally wake up? What happens when you look in the mirror and realize you don't recognize the person staring back at you? This is the moment that separates the awakened from the sleepwalkers. This is the moment when you face the brutal truth about what you've become and what you've lost. You'll realize that you've spent years, maybe decades, living someone else's version of your life. You'll see how you've edited your personality to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. You'll understand how you've dimmed your light to make others feel comfortable in their darkness. And it will hurt. God, it will hurt like nothing has ever hurt before. Because you'll realize that all those people you've been trying so hard to please, they never really knew you. How could they? You never showed them who you really are. You showed them a carefully constructed facade designed to win approval. You'll realize that all those relationships you've been so proud of are built on lies. Not malicious lies, but the everyday lies of omission that come from never saying what you really think, never expressing what you really feel, never being who you really are. The relationships are real, but they're not yours. They belong to the character you've been playing. And now you face the most terrifying question of all. If you stop playing that character, will anyone still want to know you? If you remove the mask, will anyone like what they see underneath? Most people run from this question. They dive back into the comfort of conformity, the safety of sociability, the familiar warmth of being liked by everyone and known by no one. But you're not most people. If you were, you would have stopped watching long ago. The Machiavellian choice, power or popularity. Machiavelli faced this same choice in Renaissance Italy, surrounded by powerful men who had traded their principles for political gain. He watched as brilliant leaders destroyed themselves trying to be loved by everyone, making decisions based on what would be popular rather than what would be effective. And he made a revolutionary observation that most people still can't handle today. It is impossible to be both universally loved and truly powerful. You must choose. The crowd wants you to be predictable, manageable, safe. They want you to echo their thoughts, validate their choices, and never challenge their comfortable illusions. They want you to be their mirror, reflecting back their own beliefs and biases. But mirrors don't think. Mirrors don't create. Mirrors don't lead. Mirrors only reflect. Is that what you want to be? A reflection of other people's expectations? A product of other people's opinions? A creation of other people's fears and desires? Or do you want to be something that society fears even more than failure? An independent mind that can't be bought, can't be bullied, and can't be broken? Because that's what Machiavelli was really teaching. Not how to manipulate others, but how to become unmanipulatable yourself. Not how to gain power over others, but how to reclaim power over your own thoughts, your own choices, your own life. The path begins with a single, terrifying realization. You would rather be alone with your truth than surrounded by people who only accept your lies. The painful art of subtraction. Here's what nobody tells you about reclaiming your authenticity. It's not about adding something new to your life. It's about subtracting everything that isn't really you. You'll start saying no to invitations that once made you feel important. You'll stop laughing at jokes that aren't funny. You'll quit conversations that drain your energy. You'll walk away from relationships that require you to be someone else. And people will notice. Oh, they will notice. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you've become arrogant, cold, difficult. They'll miss the old you, the accommodating you, the agreeable you that made their lives easier. But here's what Machiavelli understood about human nature. People don't miss you. They miss what you did for them. They don't miss your personality. They miss your service. They don't miss your presence. They miss your performance. They don't miss your friendship. They miss your function. And this realization will cut you deeper than any breakup, any betrayal, any failure you've ever experienced. Because you'll understand that all those years you spent trying to be indispensable, you were actually making yourself dispensable. All those times you said yes when you wanted to say no, you were teaching people that your boundaries don't matter. All those moments you sacrificed your needs for others, you were training them to expect your sacrifice. You thought you were building relationships. You were actually building resentment, theirs toward your growing independence and yours toward their entitled expectations. The loneliness that leads to freedom. The journey from sociable to sovereign is the loneliest road you'll ever walk, but it's also the only road that leads to yourself. You'll find yourself in rooms full of people, feeling more isolated than you ever felt alone. You'll hear conversations and recognize the scripts, the rehearsed responses, the automated reactions. You'll watch people perform the same social dances you once performed, and you'll feel like an alien observing a strange species. This isn't superiority, this is clarity. And clarity, once gained, cannot be voluntarily lost. You'll see through the performance of politeness to the emptiness underneath. You'll recognize the difference between connection and collection, how most people collect others like trophies rather than truly connecting with them. You'll realize that most social interactions are just mutual exploitation disguised as friendship. People using each other for validation, entertainment, distraction from their own inner emptiness. And you'll want no part of it. This is when the real transformation begins, not when you decide to change, but when you become unable to participate in the game that once consumed your life. You'll leave parties early. You'll stop returning calls that don't feed your soul. You'll end relationships that cost more energy than they create. You'll build a smaller life with deeper meaning. And the world will call this antisocial. But you'll know it's the most social thing you've ever done because you're finally being social with yourself. The emergence of your sovereign self. Something extraordinary happens when you stop performing. You start existing. For the first time in years, maybe decades, you'll experience silence without the urge to fill it. You'll sit with your own thoughts without immediately reaching for distraction. You'll face yourself without flinching. And in that quiet space, something will emerge that you thought was lost forever. Your authentic voice. Not the voice that says what others want to hear, but the voice that speaks your truth. Not the voice that seeks approval, but the voice that expresses reality. Not the voice that performs, but the voice that simply is. This voice will terrify people who knew the old you, because it doesn't seek permission to speak. It doesn't apologize for existing. It doesn't soften its edges to make others comfortable. This voice knows things. It sees patterns. It recognizes truth. It cuts through bullshit like a sword through silk. And when this voice speaks, rooms will go quiet. Not because it's loud, but because it's real. Not because it demands attention, but because it commands respect. People will sense that something has changed, even if they can't articulate what it is. You'll carry yourself differently. You'll make eye contact without desperation. You'll speak without seeking validation. You'll exist without apology. You'll become what Machiavelli called a person of fortitude, someone who can stand alone without being lonely, who can be misunderstood without being devastated, who can be disliked without being defeated. The power of strategic detachment. Machiavelli wrote about the importance of being both loved and feared, but he knew that if you had to choose, fear was more reliable than love. In the modern context, this translates to something even more powerful: the ability to be respected without being needed. When you stop needing others to complete you, you become complete. When you stop seeking approval, you become approved, not by others, but by the only judge that matters: yourself. This is what strategic detachment looks like. You engage without attachment. You participate without dependence. You connect without losing yourself. You'll show up to social situations differently, not as someone seeking something, but as someone offering something. Not as someone who needs to prove their worth, but as someone whose worth is self-evident. People will sense this shift immediately. They'll be drawn to your energy because it doesn't drain them. It doesn't need anything from them. They'll respect your boundaries because you'll actually have boundaries worth respecting. You'll discover that the less you need people, the more they want to be around you. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you genuinely don't need to get anything from them. This isn't manipulation. This is magnetism, the natural attraction that flows toward those who are complete within themselves. The art of selective engagement. You'll learn to treat your energy like the precious resource it is. No longer will you waste it on conversations that go nowhere, relationships that drain you, or activities that diminish you. You'll become strategic about where you invest your attention. You'll choose quality over quantity in every area of your life. Fewer friends but deeper connections. Fewer activities but more meaningful experiences. Fewer words but more impactful communication. This selectivity will be misunderstood by those who knew the old you. They'll interpret your boundaries as rejection, your standards as arrogance, your self-respect as selfishness. Let them. Their misunderstanding is not your burden to carry. Their comfort is not your responsibility to maintain. Their approval is not your goal to achieve. You're playing a different game now, the game of authenticity rather than acceptance, the game of depth rather than breadth, the game of quality rather than quantity. And in this game, Machiavelli's wisdom becomes your guide. It's better to be respected by a few than liked by many. It's better to be understood by yourself than misunderstood by everyone else. You'll find that the people who remain in your life after this transformation are different. They're the ones who were attracted to your authentic self rather than your performed self. They're the ones who respect your boundaries rather than resent them. They're the ones who value your truth rather than your compliance. The compound effect of authentic living. Here's what happens when you consistently choose authenticity over acceptance. You compound your power. Every time you speak your truth, instead of telling people what they want to hear, you become more trustworthy. Every time you maintain your boundaries instead of sacrificing them for harmony, you become more respectable. Every time you act from your values instead of others' expectations, you become more magnetic. This isn't immediate. This is a long-term strategy that most people abandon because they can't see the results fast enough. But you're not most people. You understand that real power, the kind that lasts, the kind that matters, the kind that changes lives, is built through consistent, authentic action over time. You'll start to notice that your words carry more weight. When you speak, people listen differently. When you make decisions, they're more decisive. When you set boundaries, they're more respected. This is the compound effect of living as your authentic self. Everything becomes more powerful because it's aligned with who you really are. Your career will shift as you stop accepting roles that require you to be someone else. Your relationships will transform as you attract people who appreciate your real self. Your entire life will reorganize around your authentic core rather than your performed periphery. The magnetic field of independence. Independence is magnetic. People are drawn to those who don't need them, who choose to be with them, rather than need to be with them. When you become truly independent, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you create a magnetic field around yourself that attracts the right people and repels the wrong ones. You'll notice that needy people no longer drain your energy because they can sense that you won't enable their neediness. Drama seekers will find other targets because they can tell you won't participate in their chaos. People who only take will move on because they can sense you'll only give what serves both parties. Meanwhile, strong people will be drawn to your strength. Independent people will respect your independence. Authentic people will recognize and value your authenticity. This is the social ecosystem that emerges around those who have mastered the art of being themselves. A circle of high-quality individuals who enhance rather than diminish each other. Machiavelli understood this principle when he wrote about the importance of choosing advisors who would tell you the truth rather than what you wanted to hear. The same principle applies to choosing friends, partners, and collaborators who appreciate your truth rather than your performance. The paradox of social power. Here's the ultimate paradox. The less social you become in the traditional sense, the more social power you gain. When you stop trying to be everything to everyone, you become something specific to the right people. When you stop seeking universal approval, you gain targeted respect. When you stop performing for the masses, you start connecting with individuals who matter. This is what Machiavellian social intelligence looks like in practice. You become selectively available rather than universally accessible. Your presence becomes a gift rather than a given. Your attention becomes valuable rather than assumed. Your approval becomes meaningful rather than automatic. People will have to earn access to your inner circle rather than expecting it as a right. They'll have to demonstrate value rather than simply demanding it. They'll have to respect your boundaries rather than assuming you have none. This shift from performed sociability to authentic selectivity is where real influence begins. You stop being influenced by everyone and start influencing the right ones. You stop being shaped by the crowd and start shaping the culture around you. You stop reacting to others' energy and start setting the energetic tone of every room you enter. The test of fire. But this transformation isn't complete until it's tested, and life will test it, repeatedly, ruthlessly. You'll face moments when taking the easy path, saying what people want to hear, doing what's expected, being who others need you to be, would solve immediate problems. The temptation to slip back into your old patterns will be enormous. This is where Machiavelli's wisdom about fortitude becomes essential. True strength is measured not by what you can do, but by what you refuse to do. You'll be offered opportunities that require you to compromise your authenticity. You'll be presented with relationships that demand you shrink back to your old size. You'll encounter situations where being your real self seems to create more problems than being your performed self would solve. And in these moments, you must choose temporary comfort or permanent integrity. Those who choose comfort will slowly slip back into their old patterns, trading their hard-won authenticity for momentary ease. But those who choose integrity will emerge from these tests stronger, clearer, and more unshakable in their commitment to being real. Each test passed makes the next one easier. Each boundary maintained makes the next one more natural. Each authentic choice makes the next one more automatic. Eventually, being yourself becomes as natural as breathing and just as impossible to fake. The point of no return. There comes a moment in this journey when you cross a line that can never be uncrossed. It's the moment when you realize you would rather be alone with your truth than surrounded by people who only accept your lies. This isn't a decision you make once. It's a decision you make every day, sometimes every hour, sometimes every moment. But once you've tasted the freedom of authenticity, the prison of performance becomes unbearable. You'll find yourself physically unable to fake enthusiasm for things that bore you. You'll discover that your body rebels against saying yes when your mind screams no. You'll realize that pretending to be someone else now requires more energy than you're willing to spend. This is when the transformation becomes irreversible. You've rewired your nervous system to value authenticity over acceptance. You've retrained your brain to prioritize truth over comfort. You've rebuilt your identity around being real rather than being liked. The old you, the one who performed, who people pleased, who shaped themselves to fit into any space, that person is gone. Not changed, not evolved, but gone. Completely and permanently extinct. And in their place stands someone who cannot be bought, cannot be guilted, cannot be manipulated into betraying themselves ever again. The solitary throne. Machiavelli wrote about the loneliness of leadership, but he was really writing about the solitude of sovereignty. When you become the ultimate authority over your own life, you also become ultimately alone in that authority. No one else can make your decisions for you anymore because no one else understands your values with the clarity you now possess. No one else can validate your choices because your validation comes from internal alignment rather than external approval. This solitude isn't emptiness, it's fullness. It's the fullness of being completely yourself in a world full of people trying to be anyone else. You'll sit in this solitude and feel more alive than you ever felt in a crowd. You'll experience this aloneness and feel more connected to yourself than you ever felt connected to others. The silence that once terrified you becomes a sanctuary that protects you. The space that once felt empty becomes the canvas on which you paint your authentic life. And from this throne of solitude, you'll rule the kingdom of your own existence with wisdom, clarity, and unwavering commitment to truth. The ripple effect of authenticity. But here's what happens when you become unshakably authentic. Your authenticity gives others permission to be authentic too. Without saying a word about it, without preaching or teaching or demanding, your mere existence as a fully realized person creates space for others to become fully realized as well. People in your presence will find themselves speaking more honestly. They'll feel safer expressing their real thoughts. They'll discover parts of themselves they had forgotten existed. This is the ultimate gift you give to the world. Not your performance, but your presence. Not your agreement, but your authenticity. Not your compliance, but your courage. You become a beacon for other souls lost in the fog of social conformity. Without trying to rescue anyone, you show them the way home to themselves simply by having found your own way. Some will follow, many will not. All will be affected by having encountered someone who chose truth over comfort, authenticity over acceptance, sovereignty over social approval. And this is how the world changes, not through grand gestures or viral messages, but through individual humans choosing to be real in a world addicted to fantasy. The final liberation. So here you stand, at the end of one life and the beginning of another. The life of performance is over. The life of authenticity begins now. You'll never again have to remember which version of yourself you showed to which group of people. You'll never again have to maintain the exhausting performance of being someone you're not. You'll never again have to choose between being true and being accepted, because you've discovered something that most people never learn. The right people will accept your truth, and the wrong people's acceptance was never worth having. You've become what Machiavelli called a person of virtue, not virtue in the moral sense, but virtue in the sense of power, authenticity, and unshakable self-command. You've learned to think without seeking permission, to speak without requiring approval, to exist without needing validation. You've become sovereign over the only kingdom that truly matters, yourself. And from this position of strength, this place of authenticity, this throne of truth, you can finally offer the world something it desperately needs but rarely receives. A human being who is exactly who they appear to be. No performance, no pretense, no masks, just you. Raw, real, and irreplaceably authentic. This is your gift to yourself and to everyone who has the courage to truly know you. The gift of presence without pretense, connection without compromise, relationship without performance. Welcome to your authentic life. Welcome to your sovereign self. Welcome to the person you were always meant to be before the world taught you to be someone else. The old you is dead. The real you is finally, fully, magnificently alive. Now stop watching and start living. Stop performing and start being. Stop seeking approval and start commanding respect. The world doesn't need another actor. It needs you, the real, authentic, unshakable you. This is your call to action. Choose truth over comfort. Choose authenticity over acceptance. Choose sovereignty over social approval. Your real life is waiting. Stop keeping it waiting. If this awakening resonates with your soul, if you're ready to join others on this journey from performance to authenticity, subscribe and become part of a community that values truth over comfort. The real you doesn't just deserve to exist, it deserves to thrive.